Yo, what's good? It's Skano. Now, I talked about the situation with Venezuela, and you can't believe nothing our government says, man. So, I'm digging around. Now, this whole premise of us, because we have our submarine, nuclear warships surrounding, you know, Venezuela, and like I said, under the guise of, you know, them being some threat to, national security or democracy in general. Because, their president, Nicolas Maduro, is allegedly tied in with the cartels, which is usually the case in these places, in, particularly South America, which is nothing new. And our government has always had ties to, South American cartel leaders. So I knew it was something more to this because why now? All of a sudden now y'all worried about the cartels and all the shit that's going on here domestically at home. And y'all got money in the budget to pull up on Venezuela when they are not a national threat. They are not a threat to security. Now, the drug war, and this is what I'm talking about as far as the deception. And they did this, like I said, in the 70s when our Contra, we had ties with a guerrilla faction in Nicaragua. We funded this guerrilla faction to overthrow the Nicaraguan government because we had political interests. We wanted something out of there that, we knew this faction would play ball if they got into power. This is how low down and grimy your government is. So they funnel all this coke, like I said, using the CIA and the dealers that was plugged in, that was, informants in the streets to fuel this whole drug war in the 70s and 80s, which was political also. They started a drug epidemic to then turn around and police it. So the same thing in Colombia, early 2000s. Alvarez, the Colombian president, who he was a right wingist. He had close political ties to the U.S. and basically, he employed death squads, but they were militias that were used basically the cartel, and they militias wiped out every political, or damn near every political adversary that this, Colombian president had. And it was all sanctioned by our government. We always been linked in with these cartel leaders who are like, pseudo presidents. But so same thing in Honduras, man. Hernandez. So we've always had ties to, you know, don't fall for the woo woo. And we've worked hand in hand with these cartel leaders or corrupt presidents of these different Latin, South American countries to fuel our own interests. So you say, what this got to do with Venezuela? So, like I said, this pseudo war against the cartels, it has nothing to do with drugs. You know, what it comes down to is Brazil's oil. Now, Venezuela. Venezuela has they have the largest supply of proven oil reserves in the world, more than Saudi Arabia. You know what I'm saying? Iraq, anywhere is Venezuela, and but they're not a big player in a political, economic, as far as being able to wield economic power. You know what I'm saying? China and Russia is now moving in. They're doing business with Brazil, with why I keep calling them Brazil, Venezuela, and the fact is, the American government see that as a threat because when your ops is you know, when a middleman, a neutron, start, you know, dealing with your ops, that obviously, you know, that's going to cause tension. So the fact that, you know, Venezuela is now distributing, sitting down with China, Russia, and they are no longer letting the United States, because we control what's going on with Venezuela as far as, like I said, we have deep political interest in this. That's what this is all about. Trying to push Venezuela around because we don't like the fact that you know, how they moving now. And they are trying to power up. You know, they trying to become a major player and not just a middleman, you know, a barter, so to speak. And this is the same old play with the United States, man. They did this, like I said, with Saddam Hussein, who they fully supported, you know. Even when he was using poisonous gases against Iran, America supported Saddam. It wasn't until later, into the early 2000s, when it became, you know, we had our eyes on that oil. Then all of a sudden he was, you know, he became the biggest op in the world. A threat to domestic, you know, foreign and domestic security, and a threat to democracy. That's what this country, that's their main premise when they want to push some shit that they know there is no real justification. A threat to democracy. But you have to ask yourself, man, there's a reason why most of the other nations in the world despise America. It ain't just out of envy, you know, and that's what our government want us to believe. You know, they envy us because we're the most prosperous country in the world, and, you know, it's just hate. It's not the truth, though. America's some bullies, man. That's what, you know, face it, your government, we some bullies. We push around these other nations. We have for a long time. We dictated policy, foreign, domestic, everywhere. You know, economic, military, we got a military presence in places where really we should, why are we there? Just pushing our weight around to remind people we run this shit. You know, so if you're interfering in our affairs, there's going to be consequences. And usually, typically, in the past, these countries will back down because we did have economic and military, you know, superiority. But the playing field's starting to level out, man. You know, economically for sure. Militarily, you know, yeah, we could still, but at the end, we could blow all this shit up. Who's that benefit? So when you start to lose economic, you know, influence around but you have to ask yourself, how much power does a nation need, man? What if we were to reduce our influence in these other nations and kind of downsize? I said we making the same mistake these other, you know, these past failed powers made. Rome, Persia, all these countries, you know, and nations that were the predominant superpowers of their time, they all fell off the same way. Overstretching their boundaries, trying to control everything globally, outsourcing shit, thinning out, you know, your infrastructure. You trying to have a military presence everywhere. That costs money, man. Oppression costs money. So it's not just FBAs that have been oppressed by this government for millennia. It's been the globe. And they are tired of America pushing them around, dictating policy, being petty and vindictive. Oh, you working with my ops? Or we gonna do this. We gonna put economic sanctions. This shit is not working anymore. Because these other nations are figuring out, okay, we don't necessarily need America, you know? And so you are witnessing the decline of a superpower in real time. And I'm not a doomsayer, you know. I don't sit around playing the violin like Nero did in Rome when it was burning, you know. I don't want to see us, you know, collapse. But the fact is, divine karma is real. And every superpower did fall at some point. you know. And I said America won't be any different. We are hastening it, you know. Folly and global politics, you know, but and obviously what's going on here domestically, the racial tension, economic strife, we ripe for a downfall. We are probably at our weakest point as a superpower, you know, as we've been. And that's not being sensational. That's reading the economic, social, you know, big board. But like I said, it's not all doom and gloom. We just won't be the big dog anymore. We'll still be a political player, but we are not the ones pushing policy anymore. All that to say, this is America, Trump slash our American government, you know, in an attempt to try to display power and control. And in the past, it didn't take all this. Pulling up on Venezuela, man, with nuclear subs, you know. So it's like, it's showing our vulnerability. And I think Trump thinks, you know, by using the military as his own personal, like I said, you know, he thinks that this is a display of power, but actually it's showing our weakness. But this whole premise that this is based on drug cartel, it's not. We've never had a problem, you know what I'm saying? Even though, you know, being one, probably the number one consumer of, you know, illicit drugs, it's been decades now, forever. As long as, you know what I'm saying? We've always been the number one. It didn't just start. You know what I'm saying? So don't fall for the woo-woo. This ain't got nothing to do with coke or fentanyl, you know, on the surface. This is really about, like I said, global influence and America feeling our government is losing its slip. You know, it is losing its grip. You know, our control globally, you know, is slipping away. And as I said, you know, we're witnessing the fall of a superpower in real time. And it is what it is, but life will go on. No ops left Scano. You already know.